The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched high above the assembled delegates, its crystalline walls reflecting light from a dozen different suns. Captain Day One stood at the back of the human observation section, his jaw tight as he watched yet another debate unfold without Earth's voice being heard. 200 years had passed since humanity made first contact with the Council races, and, in all that time, they had never been granted a single vote. Hannah leaned close to whisper in his ear. "They're discussing trade routes again. The ones that pass directly through our space." She was the Perseverance's chief navigator, and she had memorized every star chart in human territory. The proposed council route would cut straight through 3 human colonies, treating their sovereignty like it meant nothing at all. "Of course they are," Day One muttered back. He watched as Speaker Thex Allen, the Vrelian representative, gestured with his 4 arms in what passed for dismissive laughter among his species. The Vrelians controlled the largest empire in known space, spanning 47 systems with populations in the hundreds of billions. Humanity's 12 colonies looked pitiful by comparison. The meeting dragged on for hours. Temin, the weapons officer, dozed off in his seat until Boare elbowed him awake. She was the ship's engineer, a woman who could fix anything with spare parts and determination, but even she looked frustrated by the endless political theater. None of the humans in the observation deck could speak or vote. They could only watch and file reports that would be read by ambassadors who had no real power. When the session finally ended, Day One led his crew back to the Perseverance. Their ship waited at the neutral zone station, a small diplomatic vessel among the massive cruisers and dreadnoughts of the elder races. He had served on this posting for 3 years, and every day felt like swallowing broken glass. "Message coming through from New Jeju," Hannah called out from her station as they boarded. Her face went pale as she read the transmission. "Captain, it's a distress call. They're under attack." Day One rushed to her side. The message was fragmentary, breaking up with interference and panic. Vrelian raiders had appeared in orbit around the colony world. The settlement's shields were failing. They needed immediate assistance. There were 3,000 people down there, most of them farmers and their families who had traveled across the stars hoping for a better life. "Get me the council patrol frequency," Day One ordered. His hands moved across the console, pulling up the tactical display. 2 council warships were within range of New Jeju, close enough to intervene within minutes. He broadcast on all channels, sending the distress signal and requesting emergency assistance under the mutual defense protocols. The response came back 30 minutes later. Temin read it aloud, his voice hollow. "They say New Jeju falls outside council jurisdiction. They recommend we file a formal complaint through proper channels." Boare slammed her fist on her console. Proper channels? People are dying right now. But there was nothing they could do. The Perseverance was a diplomatic ship, armed with nothing more than point defense systems. By the time they could reach New Jeju, it would be over. Day One sent every message he could think of, pleading with the council ships to help. Each response was the same polite refusal, dressed up in bureaucratic language that meant the same thing: human lives did not matter enough. The final transmission from New Jeju came 8 hours after the first. It was just static and screaming, then nothing at all. 3 weeks later, Ambassador G1 stood before the full council assembly. She was a veteran diplomat who had spent 20 years navigating the complex politics of galactic society. She had always counseled patience, compromise, and peaceful negotiation. Today, her face was carved from stone. The evidence she presented was irrefutable. Satellite imagery showed Vrelian raider ships in orbit around New Jeju. Recovered data cores from the colony's defense network identified the attacking vessels by their transponder codes. 3,000 human civilians were dead, their settlement burned to ash. The youngest victim had been 4 years old. Speaker Thex Allen listened to her presentation with obvious boredom. When she finished, he made a sound that the translation system rendered as a dismissive snort. Ambassador G1, the Council sympathizes with your loss. However, these raiders acted without official sanction. The Vrelian supremacy cannot be held responsible for the actions of independent criminals. The ships were registered to Vrelian military families, G1 responded, her voice steady. The crew members have been identified. They operate openly in your space. Perhaps if humanity could properly defend its primitive outposts, such tragedies could be avoided, Thexalan said. Several other delegates made sounds of agreement. Your species insists on settling worlds you cannot protect, then, demands the Council solve problems of your own making. The chamber filled with what passed for laughter among the assembled aliens. Different species had different ways of expressing amusement, but the meaning was universal. They were mocking humanity's weakness, dismissing the deaths of 3,000 people as a learning experience for an inferior species. G1 stood perfectly still, letting the laughter wash over her. She had prepared for this moment, though she had hoped it would never come. In her hand was a data pad containing sealed orders from Earth's government. She had been authorized to use them only in the most extreme circumstances. This qualified. When the chamber finally quieted, she spoke in a voice that cut through the silence like a blade. The Terran Union hereby declares a formal state of war against the Vrelian supremacy. Effective immediately, we withdraw from all Council treaties and agreements. All Vrelian personnel have 72 hours to evacuate from human space. Any vessels remaining after that deadline will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. The laughter died instantly. Thexalan stared at her as if she had spoken in a language his translator could not process. You cannot be serious. Humanity has no military force capable of threatening the supremacy. You have 72 hours, G1 repeated. She gathered her materials and walked out of the chamber, her back straight and her head high. Behind her, the Council erupted into chaos. Some delegates called her declaration a joke, an empty gesture from a species with no real power. Others were less certain, remembering that humanity had a strange history of doing the unexpected. But most agreed on one thing: this would be a short war, and humanity would learn its place once and for all. They had no idea what was coming. For 200 years, humanity had been carefully monitored and restricted. The Council knew about every ship, every weapon, every military installation in human space. They had made certain that humanity would never be strong enough to challenge the established order. What they did not know was that humans were very good at hiding things. And even better at holding grudges. Admiral Kyung-soo stood at the head of the war room, deep beneath Earth's Pacific Command Center. The holographic display behind him showed a map of human space, dotted with hundreds of small icons that represented something the Galactic Council had never suspected existed. He was a man who had spent his entire career preparing for a war he hoped would never come, and, now that it had arrived, he felt a grim satisfaction that his work would finally be tested. Gentlemen and ladies, what you are about to see is classified at the highest level, he began. Around the table sat the commanders of Earth's defense forces, representatives from every human colony, and a handful of civilians whose expertise would prove crucial in the coming weeks. For the past 50 years, while the Council has monitored our official shipyards and military installations, we have been building something else entirely. Lieutenant Commander Young-mi activated the display. The small icons scattered across human space expanded, revealing their true nature. Hidden inside asteroid fields, buried in ice moons, concealed in the debris of ancient battlefields, humanity had constructed thousands of small manufacturing facilities. Each one had been built slowly, carefully, using materials that would not show up on Council scans. Each one had been producing the same thing: attack craft. The Council builds their military power on massive capital ships, Young-mi explained. Her presentation showed images of Vrelian battlecruisers, enormous vessels that could glass a planet from orbit. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a fleet, enough shielding to withstand sustained bombardment. They are, by any conventional measure, unstoppable. She changed the display to show a human attack craft. It was small, angular, built for speed rather than intimidation. It carried a crew of 2 to 4 people, depending on the configuration. Its weapons were simple: kinetic rail guns, nuclear torpedoes, and experimental directed energy systems that might or might not work in actual combat. One of these craft could not scratch the paint on a Vrelian battlecruiser, young Me continued. But, we do not have one. We have 50,000 of them, with more being built every day. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Admiral Kyung-soo let them process the information before speaking again. The Council has spent centuries perfecting the art of capital ship warfare. They understand shield harmonics, weapons range, power distribution. They have refined their tactics to a level we cannot match with conventional forces. So we will not play their game. He brought up tactical simulations that had been run thousands of times in secret. We call it the Swarm Doctrine. Our attack craft will operate in coordinated groups, hitting targets from multiple angles simultaneously. While a battlecruiser's shields can stop any single attack, they cannot stop thousands of attacks happening at once from different vectors. The shield generators will overload. The targeting systems will fail to track so many small, fast-moving objects. And, once the shields fall, our torpedoes will do the rest. Colonel Sung-ho raised his hand. He was a veteran pilot who had spent 20 years flying civilian transports while secretly training for this moment. What about casualties? Those craft are small. One hit from a battlecruiser's point defense and, there's nothing left. We will take heavy losses, Kyung-soo acknowledged. The weight of that admission hung in the air. But, we have numbers on our side. For every craft they destroy, 10 more will take its place. The Council has never fought an enemy willing to accept that exchange rate. The first test of the Swarm Doctrine came 3 days later at Kelver Prime, a Vrelian border fortress that had stood guard for 300 years. The fortress was designed to withstand attacks from entire fleets, with shields strong enough to tank hits from planet-killing weapons. Its automated defenses could track and engage up to 50 capital ships simultaneously. Colonel Sung-ho led the assault personally, commanding a squadron of 200 attack craft that had assembled in the shadows of a nearby debris field. They emerged from cover in a coordinated wave, their drives burning at maximum thrust. The fortress's sensors detected them immediately and opened fire with its point defense network. The first volley destroyed 17 craft in seconds. Sung-ho watched the icons disappear from his tactical display and felt each loss like a physical blow. But, he kept his squadron moving, weaving through the defensive fire in patterns that had been practiced 1,000 times in simulation. Weapons free, he called out over the squadron channel. Target their sensor arrays first. The attack craft split into smaller groups, each one focusing on a specific section of the fortress. Kinetic rounds hammered into the sensor clusters mounted on the fortress's surface. The Vrelian designers had made them redundant, but they had not anticipated dozens of attackers focusing fire on the same point simultaneously. One by one, the sensor arrays went dark. With its sensors failing, the fortress's automated defenses began firing blindly. More human craft died, but the losses slowed as the targeting became less accurate. The second wave of attack craft moved in, these ones armed with specialized electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to overload shield generators. Boare had designed those weapons personally, working from stolen Vrelian technical specifications and a lifetime of experience solving impossible engineering problems. She watched from the command ship as her weapons performed exactly as predicted. The fortress's shields flickered and weakened, unable to compensate for the cascading system failures. Shields at 40%, Taemin reported from his station aboard one of the attack craft. He had volunteered for combat duty despite being offered a safe position in tactical planning. recommending torpedo strikes on the primary generators. Sung Ho gave the order. The third wave of attack craft launched their nuclear torpedoes, timing the strikes to hit simultaneously across the fortress's shield perimeter. The shields held against the first wave, but they were already weakened and stressed. The second wave of torpedoes broke through. Plasma warheads detonated against the fortress's hull, tearing through armor that had been designed to withstand conventional bombardment. The fortress's power systems failed in cascading explosions. 47 minutes after the first attack craft emerged from cover, Kelver Prime was a drifting wreck. The cost had been high. 83 craft destroyed, more than 300 human pilots and crew dead. But they had proven the swarm doctrine worked. A fortress that should have been impregnable had fallen to an enemy the Council had dismissed as primitive. News of the victory spread through human space faster than any official communication could travel. Recruitment centers across Earth and the colonies were overwhelmed with volunteers wanting to join the fight. Engineers Jae-sung and Mi-sun watched the recruitment numbers from their station aboard one of the orbital shipyards and immediately began calculating how to increase production capacity. "We can boost output by 30% if we divert resources from civilian construction," Jae-sung said, his fingers flying across his workstation. Around them, the shipyard hummed with activity as attack craft rolled off assembly lines that had been hidden in plain sight, disguised as civilian manufacturing facilities. "Do it," Mi-sun agreed. She pulled up the production schedules for all the hidden facilities across human space. "And, send a message to the asteroid facilities. Tell them to go to maximum production. We are going to need every ship we can build." The Vrelian response was predictable. 12 battlecruisers were dispatched to destroy New Sol, one of humanity's largest colonies, in retaliation for Kelver Prime. The fleet was commanded by war leader Thexkol, a decorated officer who had served for 2 centuries. He expected the humans to meet him with their pitiful diplomatic ships and whatever military vessels they had managed to scrape together. Instead, his fleet was intercepted 3 days from New Sol by 4,000 attack craft. The battle that followed entered Vrelian history as the massacre at Deep Haven. Thexkol's battlecruisers fought bravely, destroying hundreds of human craft with their superior weapons and defenses. But the humans kept coming, wave after wave, coordinating their attacks with precision that seemed impossible for such a primitive species. 3 hours into the battle, Thexkol's flagship ran out of shield capacity. The battlecruiser's power systems could not recharge fast enough to keep up with the sustained assault. When the shields failed, human boarding parties attached to the hull and cut their way inside. The Vrelians fought desperately to repel the boarders, but humans had been fighting in close quarters for thousands of years. They knew every trick, every brutal technique for winning when space was tight and quarters were close. The flagship was captured intact, along with its war leader and most of its crew. Back on Earth, Admiral Kyung-soo reviewed the battle reports with satisfaction. The swarm doctrine had proven itself again. But he also read the casualty lists and felt the weight of each name. This was what victory looked like when you could not match your enemy's technology, expensive, bloody, and bitter even in triumph. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity was serious about this war. And, more terrifyingly, they were beginning to realize that humans fought differently than any species they had encountered before. Intelligence Officer Krelvac sat in his office deep within the Council's Central Intelligence Complex, staring at reports that made no sense according to everything he knew about warfare. He was a Karavian, a species known for their analytical minds and attention to detail. For 40 years he had studied military conflicts across the galaxy, and he had never seen anything like what the humans were doing. The debris field from the Deep Haven battle had been extensively analyzed. 12 Vrelian battlecruisers, the pride of the Supremacy's military, had been reduced to wreckage. The few survivors told stories that sounded like madness. Human pilots ramming their damaged craft into critical systems when their weapons ran dry. Attack craft coordinating in patterns so complex they seemed choreographed, yet responding to threats faster than any communication system should allow. What disturbed Krelvax most was the psychological profile emerging from interrogated prisoners. Vrelian warriors were brave, trained to face death with honor. But, they described fighting humans who seemed to have no concept of honorable combat. The humans used every trick imaginable: false retreats, feigned damage, attacks from unexpected angles. They targeted life support systems, medical bays, even food storage. Nothing was considered off-limits if it gave them an advantage. He pulled up the historical database on human warfare and spent the next several hours reading. What he found chilled him to his core. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. They had developed thousands of different combat philosophies, from ancient texts about deception and misdirection to modern theories about asymmetric warfare. They had fought with sticks and stones, with swords and spears, with bullets and bombs, and, finally, with weapons that could split atoms. The council races had been civilized for so long they had forgotten what true, desperate warfare looked like. Their conflicts were managed affairs, fought according to agreed-upon rules that limited casualties and preserved infrastructure. Battles were won by superior technology and overwhelming force, not by cunning and ruthlessness. Humans played by different rules. Or rather, they played by no rules at all except survival and victory. Analyst Unji worked in a small office in Seoul, running simulations and analyzing council military doctrine for Terran intelligence. She had spent her career studying how the elder races fought their wars, looking for weaknesses that humanity could exploit. Now her research was proving invaluable. They are predictable, she explained during a briefing to the War Council. Her presentation showed tactical analyses of council fleet movements over the past century. Every engagement follows the same basic pattern. Capital ships maneuver to optimal firing range. Shields are raised. Ships exchange fire until one side's shields fail or they retreat. The battles are essentially mathematical exercises in firepower versus defensive capacity. Admiral Kyung-soo leaned forward with interest. And, if we refuse to fight that way? Then, we can control the engagement, Unji replied. She brought up simulations showing human attack craft swarming around slower capital ships. They have no doctrine for dealing with an enemy that will not stand and fight traditionally. Their point defense systems are designed to stop missiles and torpedoes, not thousands of independently maneuvering craft. Their tactical training emphasizes formation discipline and coordinated firing solutions, which makes them vulnerable to attacks from unexpected angles. She paused, then added the most important point. But, more than that, they think in terms of honor and tradition. They announce their attacks. They give enemies time to prepare. They consider it dishonorable to strike without warning or to target non-military infrastructure. We have no such constraints. The War Council listened carefully. Some members looked uncomfortable with the implications of total war, but no one argued. New Jeju had taught them what happened when they relied on council honor and protection. The Vrelian supremacy, meanwhile, was beginning to panic. Speaker Thex Allen called for an emergency council session, demanding intervention under the mutual defense provisions. He stood before the assembled delegates, his four arms gesturing frantically as he described the barbaric human tactics. They do not fight with honor, he declared. They swarm like insects. They ran their own ships into ours in suicide attacks. They ignore all established protocols of civilized warfare. The council must intervene to enforce proper conduct. The Karavian delegate, Krelvax's superior, stood to respond. The council enforces protocols only against members in good standing. Humanity withdrew from all treaties. They are bound by no council law. Then, the council must unite to crush them before their savagery spreads, Thex Allen insisted. But, the council was far from united. Several delegates spoke quietly among themselves, doing calculations about the cost of fighting humans. The Caravian Assembly had already begun secret negotiations with human ambassadors, offering to share intelligence about Vrelian fleet movements in exchange for favorable trade terms after the war. Other races watched and waited, remembering grievances against the Vrelian supremacy that went back centuries. The Vrelians had grown arrogant in their dominance, making enemies they never thought would matter. Now those enemies saw an opportunity. The Council's attempt to enforce an economic embargo against humanity backfired spectacularly. Commander Junho led a fleet of human merchant vessels through the blockade, demonstrating that Council patrol ships could not catch craft designed for speed and equipped with sophisticated jamming technology. More importantly, several Council races quietly continued trading with humanity, unwilling to sacrifice their economic interests. The cracks in Council unity widened day by day. Ambassador G1 worked tirelessly from her office on Earth, conducting careful negotiations with potential allies. She offered favorable trade agreements, shared technology, and, most importantly, respect. Humanity treated minor Council races as equals, something the elder races had never done. "We do not want to destroy the Council," she told the Caravian ambassador during a secret meeting. "We want to reform it. Make it an organization that protects all species, not just the powerful ones." The Caravians were intrigued. They had served the Vrelians for centuries, always subordinate, always second class. The idea of a new order where merit mattered more than age appealed to them greatly. While diplomats negotiated, scientists worked. Dr. Min Seo led a research team at the quantum physics facility on Mars, pursuing theories that Council experts had dismissed as impossible. Quantum entanglement communication had been proven theoretically possible decades ago, but the practical applications had eluded researchers across the galaxy. The breakthrough came from thinking about the problem differently. Council scientists approached quantum entanglement from a traditional physics perspective, trying to create stable links across vast distances. Min Seo and her team approached it as an engineering problem instead. They did not need the links to be perfect or permanent. They just needed them to work long enough to coordinate fleet movements. The prototype system was crude, prone to interference, and required massive amounts of power. But it worked. Two ships equipped with quantum entanglement communicators could coordinate their actions with zero time lag, regardless of the distance between them. While Council fleets still relied on faster-than-light communication with its inherent delays, human forces could react instantly to changing battlefield conditions. The strategic implications were staggering. Admiral Kyung-soo immediately ordered the technology installed on every attack craft and command ship. Within weeks, human fleet coordination improved dramatically. Squadrons spread across multiple star systems could execute complex maneuvers as if they were in visual range of each other. The Vrelian High Command, unaware of this development, decided on a decisive strike. They would assemble the largest fleet in their history and strike directly at Earth. Surely the humans would be forced to defend their homeworld with everything they had. It would be a proper battle, the kind the Vrelians understood. They would crush humanity's military in one glorious engagement and end this embarrassing conflict. 200 battlecruisers were assembled from across the Vrelian Empire. It represented nearly half their total military strength, pulled from garrison duties and border patrols. The fleet was so large it took 3 weeks just to organize the logistics and plot a course to Earth. Human intelligence detected the fleet assembly immediately. Spy satellites hidden in Vrelian space, sleeper agents on their worlds, and information from their new Caravian allies provided complete intelligence on the fleet's composition and route. The quantum communication network allowed this information to reach Earth Command instantaneously. Captain Day 1 received his orders while the Perseverance was docked for resupply. He was being promoted to fleet captain and given command of a carrier group. His mission was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. While the Vrelian armada crawled toward Earth, his forces would strike deep into Vrelian space, hitting everything the enemy fleet left undefended. "They are bringing their shields to attack our heart," Admiral Kyung-soo told him during the briefing. "So we will burn their house down while they are gone. By the time they reach Earth, they will have nothing to return to." It was brutal, ruthless, and exactly the kind of warfare the Council had never imagined humans capable of. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about what happened when you pushed a species too far and gave them nothing to lose. The Vrelian armada moved through space like a massive metal storm, 200 battlecruisers traveling in perfect formation toward Earth. War leader Vexthal commanded the fleet from his flagship, confident that this overwhelming show of force would end humanity's rebellion once and for all. The journey would take 3 weeks at maximum sustainable speed, but that was acceptable. The humans would see the fleet coming and know their fate was sealed. What Vexthal did not know was that while his fleet moved toward Earth, Fleet Captain Day One was leading strike forces deep into the undefended heart of Vrelian space. The quantum communication network allowed human forces to coordinate attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously, hitting targets the moment the Vrelian fleet moved out of range to respond. The first strikes targeted infrastructure. Supply depots that fed the Vrelian military machine exploded in brilliant flashes as nuclear torpedoes found their marks. Fuel refineries on 3 different worlds burned for days, sending thick black smoke into alien skies. Shipyards that had been building vessels for centuries were systematically dismantled by swarms of attack craft that appeared from nowhere, struck with precision, and vanished before local defenses could respond. Hannah coordinated the navigation for Day One's carrier group, plotting courses through unmapped space to avoid detection. They traveled through asteroid fields and nebulae, using every natural phenomenon to mask their approach. The Vrelians had grown complacent during centuries of dominance, never expecting an enemy to strike so far behind their front lines. "Target ahead," Hannah reported as they approached a major Vrelian colony world. Population 12 billion, significant military presence in orbit. 3 defense platforms and a patrol squadron of 8 battlecruisers. 8 against our 400, Day One mused. The odds would have been impossible against capital ships, but his carrier group launched attack craft that swarmed the defenders like angry hornets. "All wings, execute attack pattern Delta. Priority targets are the defense platforms." The battle was brief and one-sided. The Vrelian defenders fought bravely, but they were outnumbered 50-1 by fast-moving craft they could not effectively track. When the defense platforms fell, Day One gave the order he had been dreading. "Target the orbital manufacturing facilities. Military targets only, but be thorough." Boare watched from the engineering deck of the lead carrier, monitoring the attack craft systems. She had helped design many of those ships, optimizing their weapons and engines for maximum effectiveness. Now she watched them destroy facilities that had stood for generations. It felt wrong, even though she knew it was necessary. This was what war looked like when you fought to win rather than to look honorable. The manufacturing centers drifted into the planet's atmosphere, burning up in streaks of fire that lit the night sky. The colony itself was untouched, but its ability to support the Vrelian war machine was crippled. Day One's fleet moved on to the next target before reinforcements could arrive. Similar scenes played out across Vrelian space. Commander Junho led raids against communication hubs, severing the connections that allowed the Vrelian command structure to coordinate their scattered forces. Taemin commanded a squadron that specialized in hit-and-run attacks on supply convoys, destroying the logistics network that kept the Vrelian military fed and armed. Back at Council headquarters, the emergency sessions became more frequent and more desperate. The Karavian delegate presented evidence of the devastation in Vrelian space, but his tone was neutral, almost satisfied. The Vrelians had bullied the Karavians for centuries, and now they were paying the price. "The humans are conducting warfare in a manner inconsistent with civilized norms," the Vrelian representative declared, his forearms trembling with rage and fear. "They strike civilian infrastructure without warning. They ignore the protocols of engagement. They must be stopped. They strike military infrastructure, the Caravian delegate corrected. Shipyards, supply depots, manufacturing centers. Nothing they have done violates the basic laws of war, only your expectations of how war should be conducted. Other delegates nodded in agreement. The humans had been careful to avoid civilian casualties where possible, even as they devastated the Vrelian military-industrial complex. It was brutal but not barbaric, efficient but not genocidal. They fought to win, but they fought with a code even if it was not the Council's code. The political situation deteriorated rapidly. Several minor council races openly declared neutrality, refusing to support the Vrelians. Two actually began negotiations with humanity for defensive alliances, terrified that they might be the next target if they chose the wrong side. The carefully maintained unity of the Galactic Council crumbled under the pressure of human military success. Ambassador G1 worked 18-hour days from her office on Earth, conducting diplomacy while war raged across the stars. She met with representatives from a dozen different species, offering partnership and respect while being careful not to appear threatening. Humanity did not want to rule the galaxy, she explained. They just wanted to be treated as equals. We remember what it was like to be dismissed and ignored, she told the delegate from the Torvian cluster during one meeting. We will never do that to others. Join us in reforming the Council into something better, something fair. The Torvians were a minor species with only 3 colony worlds, perpetually overshadowed by their larger neighbors. The idea of a council where they would have a real voice was almost too good to believe. They signed a non-aggression pact with humanity and quietly began sharing intelligence about Vrelian fleet movements in their sector. While diplomacy and raids occupied most of the human military, Admiral Kyung-Soo prepared Earth's defenses. He knew the Vrelian armada would arrive eventually, and, when it did, the battle would be unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Engineers worked day and night to prepare defensive positions in orbit around Earth and throughout the Sol system. Young Mi coordinated the defensive planning from Lunar Command. Thousands of attack craft were positioned at strategic points around Earth, hidden among the orbital infrastructure and space debris. New weapons platforms were constructed and disguised as civilian installations. The entire solar system became a trap waiting to snap shut. They will expect us to meet them in open space, Young Mi explained during a strategy session. Traditional fleet engagement, capital ships facing each other across the void. We will not give them that battle. The plan was to let the Vrelian fleet penetrate deep into the Sol system, drawing them in until they were surrounded by hidden attack craft and weapons platforms. It was a risky strategy that depended on perfect coordination and iron nerves, but it played to humanity's strengths. Colonel Sung-ho was given command of the forward defense wings, the attack craft that would make the initial contact with the Vrelian fleet. He selected his pilots personally, looking for veterans of the Kelver Prime and Deep Haven battles. They would need experience and courage for what was coming. 3 weeks after departing Vrelian space, the Armada entered the Sol system. Vexthal stood on his flagship's command deck, staring at the tactical displays with growing unease. He had expected to find Earth's defenses concentrated around the planet, a desperate last stand by the humans. Instead, his sensors showed only scattered civilian traffic and a handful of orbital defense platforms that looked pitifully inadequate. Where are their fleets? His tactical officer asked nervously. Destroyed in our earlier battles, or tied up defending their colonies, Vexthal replied, though he did not sound convinced. Proceed toward Earth. Weapons ready. The Armada advanced deeper into the Sol system, passing the orbit of Mars without encountering significant resistance. A few outdated defense satellites fired token shots that were easily deflected by shields. It all felt wrong, but Vexthal could not identify why. They were passing through the asteroid belt when the trap sprang. Attack craft emerged from hiding spots throughout the belt, appearing from behind asteroids and debris fields by the thousands. Sung-ho led the first wave personally, his craft accelerating to attack speed as his squadron followed. The quantum communication network synchronized the attack perfectly across 50,000 craft, creating a coordinated assault that hit the Vrelian fleet from every angle simultaneously. All wings, weapons free, Sung Ho transmitted. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. The Battle of Earth had begun, and it would last 6 days. 6 days of constant fighting, of attack craft dying by the hundreds and being replaced by fresh squadrons. 6 days of Vrelian battlecruisers fighting desperately against an enemy that would not stand and fight fairly. 6 days that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Vexthal quickly realized his mistake. The human fleet had not been destroyed. It had been waiting, preparing, turning Earth's home system into a killing field. His massive armada, invincible in a traditional battle, was being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight traditionally. As his flagship's shields began to fail under the relentless assault, Vexthal understood that the war was already lost. The question now was whether any of his fleet would survive to tell the story of how the Vrelian supremacy had fallen to a species they had dismissed as primitive. The Battle of Earth entered its 6th day with both sides exhausted but the outcome no longer in doubt. War leader Vexthal sat in his damaged flagship, surrounded by the wreckage of the once mighty Vrelian armada. Of the 200 battlecruisers that had entered the Sol system, fewer than 30 remained combat capable. Thousands of human attack craft still swarmed around his position, though they had stopped firing an hour ago. A communication request came through on the emergency diplomatic channel. Vexthal hesitated, then accepted it. The holographic display showed Admiral Kyung-soo, the human commander who had orchestrated this devastating defense. The human looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but there was no triumph in his expression, only grim professionalism. War leader Vexthal, I am authorized to offer terms of surrender, Kyung-soo said in flawless Vrelian. Your remaining ships and crews will be granted safe passage back to Vrelian space. In exchange, the Vrelian supremacy will agree to an immediate ceasefire and enter into peace negotiations with the Terran Union. Vexthal felt 4 centuries of military tradition warring with practical reality. Surrender was shameful, but continuing the fight would only lead to the complete destruction of his fleet and the deaths of thousands more Vrelian warriors. He thought about his crew, young soldiers who had trusted him to lead them to victory, not to their deaths in a war that was already lost. I accept your terms, he finally said. The words tasted like ash in his mouth, but they were the right words. The Vrelian supremacy will honor the ceasefire. The human admiral nodded with what might have been respect. Your ships may begin departure when ready. Medical assistance will be provided for your wounded. You fought with courage, war leader. That is worth remembering. The transmission ended, and Vexthal began the painful process of ordering his fleet to withdraw. Around him, his officers worked in silence, too shocked by their defeat to speak. The Vrelian supremacy had never lost a major conflict in its history, and now they had been beaten by a species that was not even granted a vote in council deliberations. News of the Vrelian surrender spread through the galaxy faster than light-speed communication should allow. The council convened an emergency session, but this time the atmosphere was very different from the meeting where humanity had declared war. Ambassador G1 entered the chamber not as an observer but as the representative of a military power that had proven its strength. The seating arrangement had changed. The human delegation now occupied a position of prominence, level with the elder races rather than relegated to the observer section. No one objected to this new arrangement. Speaker Thex Allen, who had mocked humanity months before, sat silent and, defeated, his political career in ruins. G1 stood before the assembled delegates and spoke with calm authority. The war between the Terran Union and the Vrelian supremacy has ended. We did not seek this conflict, but we will not apologize for defending ourselves and our people. The question now is what kind of galaxy we will build from the ashes of the old order. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. Humanity does not desire domination over other species. We want partnership, cooperation, and mutual respect. We propose a reformed Galactic Council, one where membership is based on contribution rather than age, where protection is guaranteed for all species regardless of their size or strength. The Caravian delegate stood to speak in support. The Caravian Assembly endorses this proposal. For too long, the Council has served the interests of a few powerful races while smaller species are ignored. It is time for change. Other voices joined in, representatives of minor species who had watched humanity's military success and seen an opportunity to improve their own standing. The debate lasted for hours, but the outcome was never truly in doubt. The old guard could resist, but they could not stop the momentum for reform. Captain Day One watched the proceedings from the Perseverance, now stationed at the neutral zone with a very different mission than before. Instead of observing in silence, his ship was part of a human fleet that guaranteed the security of the council chambers. It was a symbolic position, but symbols mattered in politics. Hannah worked at her navigation station, coordinating with dozens of other human vessels scattered throughout council space. The quantum communication network had revolutionized not just military operations but civilian coordination as well. Humanity was already sharing the technology with their new allies, building connections that would outlast any treaty. It is strange, Hannah said quietly. A year ago we were ignored. Now they listen to every word we say. They listen because we made them listen, Taemin replied from his station. He no longer served as a weapons officer, having been reassigned to security coordination for diplomatic missions. Respect cannot be granted as a favor. Sometimes it must be taken. The peace negotiations between humanity and the Vrelian supremacy took place on a neutral station orbiting a star between their territories. The Vrelian delegation arrived expecting harsh terms, reparations that would cripple their economy, territorial concessions that would reduce their empire. What they received instead surprised them. We want three things, G1 told the Vrelian negotiators. First, recognition of human sovereignty over our established territories with no restrictions on our expansion or military development. Second, reparations for the new Jeju massacre to be paid to the victims' families. Third, a mutual defense treaty ensuring that neither side will attack the other without extreme provocation. The lead Vrelian negotiator, a diplomat named Kexval, stared at the simple list of demands. That is all. No demands for territory or resources. No requirement that we dismantle our fleet. We do not want to destroy the Vrelian supremacy, G1 explained. We want to coexist with it. Your empire has knowledge and experience that would benefit the galaxy if used for cooperation rather than domination. We would prefer you as allies rather than enemies. The negotiations concluded within a week, remarkably fast for diplomatic matters involving multiple star systems. The treaty was signed with minimal ceremony, both sides exhausted by war and ready for peace. Back on Earth, the demobilization of the military began, though not its disbandment. Admiral Kyung-soo oversaw the process personally, ensuring that while the massive wartime fleet was reduced, humanity maintained enough strength to defend itself. The hidden shipyards continued production at reduced capacity, a quiet reminder that humanity would never again be defenseless. Boire returned to civilian engineering, applying the technical knowledge she had gained during the war to peaceful projects. She led a team designing new types of civilian spacecraft using the advanced propulsion systems developed for attack craft. The galaxy was opening up to human exploration, and she wanted to be part of that expansion. On New Jeju, the rebuilt colony dedicated a memorial to those lost in the raid that had sparked the war. The ceremony was attended by thousands, including many of the soldiers who had fought in the conflict. Young pilot Hygiene, one of the veterans of the Kelver Prime assault, gave a speech that was broadcast across human space. We remember those who died here not with anger but with purpose, she said, standing before the monument etched with 3,000 names. Their deaths taught us that we cannot rely on others to protect us, that respect must be earned through strength and determination. But, we also learned that strength without wisdom is simply destruction. We fought this war not to conquer but to secure our place among the stars as equals. The memorial became a place of pilgrimage for humans throughout the colonies, a reminder of the cost of being underestimated and the price of earning respect. The Galactic Council's reformation took longer, involving months of negotiations and compromises. The final structure maintained some elements of the old system while incorporating human proposals for fairness and representation. Smaller species gained voting rights proportional to their populations and contributions. Military forces could no longer be used to intimidate member species. Disputes would be settled through arbitration rather than force. Analyst Unji watched the new council structure take shape with satisfaction. She had spent years studying the old system's flaws, and now she saw those flaws being corrected. It was not perfect, but it was better. That was enough. Dr. Min Seo continued her quantum physics research, now with funding from multiple council races interested in the communication technology. She led a team of scientists from 6 different species, sharing knowledge freely and advancing understanding faster than any single race could alone. The old model of hoarding technology for competitive advantage was giving way to collaborative research. Fleet Captain Day 1 received new orders 6 months after the war's end. The Perseverance was being reassigned from diplomatic duties to exploration. Humanity had secured its place in the galaxy, and now it was time to see what lay beyond the known regions of space. He assembled his old crew, the people who had served with him through years of frustration and months of war. "We are explorers again," he told them as they prepared for departure. "Not diplomats trying to earn respect or soldiers defending our homes. We go into the unknown representing a species that has proven its worth." The Perseverance departed Earth orbit on a bright morning, joining dozens of other exploration vessels heading in different directions. The galaxy that had once been closed to humanity now lay open, full of possibilities and potential. The elder races who had laughed when Ambassador G1 declared war now watched human expansion with cautious respect and the uncomfortable awareness of their own assumptions being proven wrong. In council chambers, human representatives worked alongside Karavian, Torvian, and even Vrelian delegates to address the galaxy's challenges. Old enemies became partners, united by shared interests and mutual respect earned through fire and blood. The war had been terrible, costly in lives and resources. But it had also been necessary. Humanity had learned what it was capable of when pushed to its limits. The galaxy had learned that age and size did not guarantee superiority, that innovation and determination could overcome traditional advantages. As the Perseverance jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the Sol system behind, Captain Day 1 made one final log entry. "For 200 years, we waited for the galaxy to accept us. Then, we stopped waiting and made them accept us. The future is no longer something we observe from the sidelines. It is something we help create. And that makes all the difference." The stars stretched into lines of light as the ship accelerated, carrying humanity toward whatever adventures and challenges lay ahead. The age of being underestimated was over. The age of partnership and exploration had begun. And, somewhere in the galaxy, in council chambers and military academies and diplomatic offices, the elder races were still learning to adjust to the new reality that humanity had forced them to acknowledge. The primitive species from the small blue planet had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same.